Warning. You've reached On the Box with Ray Comfort and are now in a biblical truth zone. Place all questions about theology, current events, and evangelism on the box, where they'll be weighed against the truth of God's Word. Ready your hearts and minds. You're about to be inspired and equipped to fulfill the Great Commission. Programming to engage in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to On the Box with Ray Comfort. I'm next to Ray Comfort. Ray, it is always a joy to be next to you, and it's always a joy to see what you are working on. We are working on a very big project at the moment.
It's Sleepless in Los Angeles. I cannot sleep. I'm so excited about it.
Well, let me tell you, I've kind of taken a little, almost a month hiatus here and handed the project over to Eddie, our producer director, and he's done some amazing things with it. And this morning, I had watched Famous Atheists. That is the video that we're working on. First we did a 180, then we did Genius, and now we have a new video coming your way entitled Famous Atheists. Ray, tell us just a little 30-second quirk about Famous Atheists, because we're getting some really neat commendations before we release this.
Yeah, it's showing in 34 minutes that will rock your
Garden.
rock your garden, that a Darwinian evolution is not scientific. There's not an ounce of evidence. I had the joy of interviewing 4 evolutionary scientists at UCLA and USC and P.Z. Myers, and from their own mouths, they cannot give any evidence of Darwinian evolution. They give evidence for adaptation, they give evidence of speciation, but not for a change of kind. So we held their feet to the fire, and they came up with nothing, and it's so exciting. This is going to be an arsenal.
Were you surprised that they came up with nothing? Did you think they were going to come up with something?
No, I knew nothing would evolve because it takes too long for them to come up with something. So it was just a matter of getting out because they're dishonest. I had so many professors turn down interviews.
Yes.
One guy says, I'll talk with you, but not on camera.
Yes.
And just think, if someone came up to you and I as Christians and said, would you share something about creationism? We would say, absolutely. But these guys, they run because they've got nothing.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm as excited with this project as I was with 180, and I was through the moon with excitement. I was inside my office today watching
it's over
the video.
Moon, not through the moon.
I'm
You went
strong.
shot through the moon?
Look at this.
Well, you're not easy. Stop
Oh,
it.
sorry, that's right. But I'm totally excited with this and be waiting for the promo, the trailer, which will be coming out in just about a day or so.
Yeah.
It'll be hitting YouTube. You want to be waiting for that. Scotty is with us inside the studio in my normal seat. Scotty, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here, as always.
Nice, nice. Well, today we're going to be talking about friendship evangelism and how it's not very friendly, Ray.
No, it's not.
Well, this is typically the evangelistic methodology that a lot of churches use out there. It is so unfriendly that it's not even being used today.
So there's a
isn't it?
quote from someone, from Anonymous.
Anonymous. Anonymous writes this letter to us. I see videos of you guys on the streets a lot, speaking to strangers. Don't you think it'd be smarter to become friends with people over time, build their trust, and earn the right to speak into their lives? It just seems like if you're already friends, it makes it much more likely that they'll get saved.
That reminds me of that famous quote by St. Francis the Sissy. St. Francis of Assisi.
Yes.
He said, preach the gospel. When necessary, use words. Actually, I did a big study on that, and I couldn't find any evidence he said it. Someone else said it in a tribute to the poor guy. He was not a sissy. He was a very courageous man, and I'm sure he didn't say that stupid statement. It's like saying, breathe, and when necessary, use air.
Right.
It's just stupid.
I also like what you shared not too long ago about preach the gospel, and if necessary, use amplification. Was that you or Tony?
Someone else. It's probably Tony, but I loved it. I could have grabbed that one. That was good.
It is absolutely great. Let me read you a quick little quote here from an individual who said, many believers are rabbit hole Christians. In the morning, they pop out of their safe Christian homes, they hold their breath at work, scurry home to their families, and then off to their Bible studies, and finally end the day praying for the unbelievers they safely avoided all the day.
Boy, that's very... It's like me sometimes on my bike when I see someone I'm heading towards, I want to go on the other side of the road. But I don't. I've got this battle between, it's either flesh or spirit or flesh or conscience.
Yeah.
My conscience demands that I share the gospel with everyone.
Right.
and my flesh says, run.
Right.
You know?
Well, I'll tell you, this is exactly what Greg and I experienced on the way home from Omaha.
This is
past.
Greg Alsasser.
Greg Alsasser, Roman and George. So I jump online to see if there's going to be anybody sitting next to us on the plane. I told him, yep, there is somebody sitting next to us, Greg. Greg was by the aisle. I was by the window. I looked over at him. He looked at me, and he said, which one of us is going to be sharing the good news?
No doubt. You'd pray about it, wouldn't you?
Well, we did something a little bit more spiritual. We rock, paper, scissored, and I lost, which means I actually won. I had the opportunity to share the gospel with this person who I chickened out with. But I ended up giving him it was either Genius DVD or a 180 DVD. And I
So
had
you couldn't see because your eyes were closed?
My eyes were closed. I was a little bit nervous. But we are reluctant at times to
Mark,
share the gospel.
this is confession time. I always pray for the person that's going to sit next to me on a plane. I pray earnestly they won't show up. I pray they'll miss the flight. The doors will close. They don't make it. And I'm always so grateful that that's been my attitude, because I don't think it's ever turned out where I've regretted witnessing to someone on a plane, and there's been lots. You know.
Do you think there'll be an opportunity on your deathbed, Ray, where you'll regret all the people you shared the gospel with?
I don't think so, but I'd like to ask Scotty what he thinks about what we're talking about.
You can if you like.
Yeah, Scotty, what do you think of what we're talking
Oh,
about?
it reminded me of, the weather always lets me down, because I'll look at the weather and, it's time to go open air preaching, and it'll be cloudy and dreary, and it looks like it's going to rain. And I think, yeah, if it rains, I won't have to go. And it always lets me down. And the sky opens and the weather clears, and we go preach the gospel, and we go dragging our feet but clicking our heels when we come back. So it's always good.
Absolutely.
We read quotes such as this, Ray, from George Whitefield. He said, God forbid that I should travel with anybody a quarter of an hour without speaking of Christ.
Boy, that's so true. It's so wonderful.
It seems to be missing in a lot of Christendom today, but it's certainly not missing from your life and a lot of people that you know. We want to jump over to a video by our good friend Carl Kirby. It's as a Christian, I don't need to talk about Jesus. I just need to live a good life. I think you'll enjoy this video by our good buddy, Carl Kirby.
As Christians, when people bring up the topic of evangelism, what do you think that means? Well, in my experience, people usually end up in one of two camps. Camp 1 says you need to talk about Jesus and live a life that's consistent with what you believe, and Camp 2 says all you have to do is live a good life. It'll speak for itself. Well, first of all, it's a big jump to assume that anyone can live a good life, don't you think? I mean, Romans 3:10 through 11 says, none is righteous, no, not one, and no one does good, not even one. That doesn't convince you. In Mark 10, a man comes up to Jesus and kneels down before him and says, good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus responds promptly with, why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. Now, not only was Jesus subtly claiming to be God here, he's making it pretty clear that nobody is good except for him, hence the no one is good part. But this is the sideshow to the main event, folks, so step right up and let's get down to it. And let's assume when Camp 2 says good life, they just mean if you live a visible, godly life, people will, just by watching you, understand all they need to know about God. Okay, let's play that out, shall we? And let's ask Bruce if he can help us. Hey, Bruce, hey. So Bruce grabs a Mormon, a Jehovah's Witness, and a Christian, and he tells you to follow each of those folks around, and after simply watching them, you'll know all you need to know about God. Now, each goes to a place every week and sits among like-minded folks. Each person prays, each treats you with respect, each loves his family, is honest with his money, and is basically a nice person. So, which God do you pick based on just watching? Who's right? How do you know? What do you compare unless they tell you why they do what they do? Talking, it seems, becomes critical. No doubt nature reveals much about the invisible attributes of God, but how do you know exactly what he requires of you? I mean, who he really is and what his ultimate plan is without some kind of specific revelation from him? I mean, how would you know if your mother wanted you to paint the left wall of the garage red if it wasn't specifically communicated to you in some way, usually by writing a note or speaking to you? So, what did God deem the best way to communicate the specifics of his will? Did he summon porpoises to do a modern dance? Did he draw word pictures in the clouds? No. To communicate precisely the things he wanted you to know, he intervened throughout history and spoke through men, ultimately moving some of them to write the Bible. That is, he spoke and he wrote a note. How would we know if God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, that Adam and Eve were created in a perfect world, but their rebellion brought sin and death into the world, that it's the grace of God through faith in Jesus alone that saves us? How would you know that Jesus died on the cross and resurrected from the grave? How would you know any detail about God and his word and his plan if nobody told us? Well, we wouldn't. We couldn't. And that's why you got to tell people things. You just can't hope people will catch on by watching you live a so-called good life. It's just not enough. Ultimately, you got to tell them why you live that way. But don't just take my word for it, my inquiring Berean band of misfits. Read along in Romans 10. And how can they know who to trust if they haven't heard of the one who can be trusted? And how can they hear if nobody tells them? Jesus himself definitively declares in Matthew 28, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and teaching them to observe all that I commanded you." It's kind of hard to baptize in the name of somebody without actually saying the name, and it's pretty difficult to teach people to observe commandments without telling them what those commandments are, right? I mean, I could go on until my mouth falls off, but suffice to say, Christians are commanded to live a life worthy of the calling, which irrefutably includes things like giving reasons and answers for our hope and engaging in a conversation about Christ. So this idea that you never have to speak out about your faith and all you have to do is live a good life and people will catch on has been debunked. Adios.
I got to say, I'd stress out if I met that guy in person.
Used car salesman. You know, boy, that guy is amazing. And that's not Carl Kirby. That's a friend of Carl Kirby's that speaks like that, and he does.
Does he
typically
seriously
talk
speak like that?
No, not normally, but when he does those videos, he does a very good job. Martin Luther Ray, he said, "It's the duty of every Christian to be Christ to his neighbor."
Well, I've never heard of Martin Luther Ray, but that's great.
Martin Luther, it's the duty of every Christian to be Christ to his neighbor.
Yeah.
Somebody once said that we are, I don't know what they said. What did they say?
I'll tell you what, I'd like to say that imagine if someone's house is on fire and the way that you awaken them to the fact it's on fire is you walk up and down in front of their house on the sidewalk looking really clean cut and nice.
Trying to have that look as you look inside their house, hoping that they see it in your eyes.
No, you'd scream, your house is on fire, wake up and get out. And that's exactly what we're called to do. How should they hear unless we speak? And that's what the scriptures say, and that's what the disciples said, something like that.
Yeah, aren't we glad they didn't stay in the upper room, huh, Fred?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And if they did, well, we wouldn't be here with the message that we're sharing with you today. Scotty, what are your thoughts on going into all the world and preaching the gospel, not just to friends, but to strangers alike? Do we need to win them?
What were you saying?
Do we need to win them over as friends before we're able to actually speak into their lives, Scotty?
Yeah, I would say no. And I've heard Ray say the same thing. It's harder to share to friends. It's harder to share to family. Close relations, you know, they know everything about you. Oh, they've heard it all before. There's just 100 different reasons why it's more difficult with a stranger. You may never see them again, for one thing, but more than that is the time that's involved. Seeker sensitive and pursuing after people and doing good works, those are all good, and we should be full of good works. But we need to share the gospel with everybody, and you don't know that they're going to get hit by a car. There's all kinds of stories about people who didn't share their faith and then that person committed suicide or they were killed in an accident or different things like that that bring a stark illustration to it. But just trust the Lord and put your I was trying to think of a phrase. Put your feet where your mouth is, or something like that. Don't do that. But
I hear what
you
you're
get
saying.
the idea.
Yeah.
You know, some of the hardest people to share with are
Put your
friends
money where your
and
mouth
family.
is probably what Scotty was thinking.
Yeah, don't put your foot where your mouth is. But sharing with friends and family are some of the most difficult people to share the gospel with, right?
Absolutely. You know, if I witness to a half a dozen atheists and say something I don't like, they say, "Get out of here, you silly guy," and I've lost nothing.
Yeah.
Really, but if my mom or my brother, my sister says the same thing, "Get out of here, I never want to see you again," I've lost everything. So it becomes very scary witnessing to someone that's a friend or a relation. So it's far easier to witness to strangers than it is to... And the Bible doesn't say Jesus sat thus on the well for 2 years with a woman at the well.
Yeah.
He inquired if she was well, and then he immediately swung to the spiritual and spoke to her of the fact that she'd violated the seventh commandment.
You know, there's a unspoken rule amongst my friends that when I go over to their house, if they have family, neighbors, and friends that are visiting, I'm the one that gets to share the gospel with them. And vice versa. They come over to my house, we're having a holiday, there's a party, some sort of a gathering. They are the ones that I'm looking to share with my family, friends, and neighbors.
And you so want to do it for your friends.
Yeah.
You know, really, because you know how they're feeling. I remember Easy's brother was unsaved. I don't know where he is at the moment, but I had opportunity to witness to him, and I had such a sense of satisfaction that I could say things to him that Easy really couldn't. You know.
Yeah, I remember we were driving along, and you began to share the gospel with my my brother. He still hates you.
Yes.
He still
I
hates
know.
you. But I'm clean. I'm good. You know, I mean, everything's good and
true.
copacetic. We got this email from Lona. It starts off with Iona by Bob. Well, his email starts off with explaining that he was at his daughter's business using the copier, and some clients were there. Starts off and says, I felt to offer the track as I thought they might like to improve their English, plus get the good news. Well, the young man refused me. The girls took them, and 5 minutes later, as they talked in Chinese among themselves, they all got up and they walked out. My daughter came back and asked me where they went and why they left. I just shrugged my shoulders. Well, you have to understand, she's not a true convert. I didn't have the courage just to tell her that I lost her 3 clients for her. Is it wrong to be in someone else's place of business, appear as though you're on staff, and then hand out tracts? There's all kinds of issues here as I begin to look through this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why did they leave the business? Maybe they left the business because they all wanted to get right with the Lord. You suppose that?
Could be. Absolutely. You
Possibly.
Don't know.
There could be that slight chance. Who knows? Maybe if he was upright and forthright in this circumstance, they probably wouldn't have left. They undoubtedly had grabbed a hold of the idea that this person was associated with this business, and they didn't want to be a part of that. But who knows? We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't have all the details.
I want to say to Iona.
Bob,
Lana? Yeah, we can't see if it's L's or I's. I want to say, God bless you for your faithfulness. Anyway, It reminds me of when I blew it in New York once. I being Jewish, was able to sneak in on a Sabbath to a Jewish synagogue in New York, and I was wearing a hidden camera.
Yes, you were.
And I filmed for an hour. We never used the footage because I didn't want to end up in court. But I filmed the whole thing in a Orthodox Jewish synagogue, and they just loved me, and things went so well, and I was still filming right through, and we decided we'd bring the camera crew in to do some filming, and in came the camera crew, and just automatically I gave I think it was the Rabbi Sana gospel tract, and we all got kicked out.
Yeah.
Really quick. They grabbed that tract, came back to me and said, is this about JC? And I said, it's JC. And they wouldn't even say the name of Jesus, but they kicked us out. Remember that, Scotty?
Oh, yeah. I lost my very expensive shotgun microphone with the boom and everything. I was so startled by the situation that I left it. And we didn't discover it until we'd driven down the road quite a ways, and a friend there went back, and here it was sitting in the trash, the boom with the shotgun mic out of the trash can, and he picked it up and brought it back.
It's worth a lot of money. It's like they put gloves on.
They just threw it out. They didn't want anything to do with anything.
Leprosy.
Yeah.
Well, there really is no reason to be deceptive in our approach. And you get accused a lot of lying and being deceptive, but it's so ridiculous when you think about the tenets of Christianity. When we have a God who cannot lie, commands us not to lie, why in the world would we lie to try to promote the cause of Christ?
Right.
We hear people give their testimonies. They stretch the story and want to give God the glory for what God has done in their lives. But the best testimony is one where you're actually free from not doing a lot of the things that are associated with the things of the world. Nobody needs to know that maybe you were a drug dealer or you were whatever it may be. You fill in the blanks. I remember there's been many times where I've gone into restaurants and there's been a wait and wanting to not lose the time as people are walking in. I say, hey, how many in your party? 2, 3? Great. Here you go. Jimmy will help you up at the front of the podium. Make sure you give him your name. And it looked as if I was part of the establishment. And then as people were leaving, I'd say, hey, thank you for joining us. And I'd give them a couple tracts.
We've done that lots. When people coming into restaurants just stand at the door when they come in and say, hey, thank you. And just give them tracts as they walk in, and they all take them.
Yeah.
We got kicked out of a
We did. In
once.
Chicago, we were at a pizzeria, Gino's East.
Oh, you
was the
remember
restaurant.
that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Still trap mine.
Yeah,
right?
Mark was doing the light show, and I was giving tracts to people in the restaurant because they were taking so long to deliver those pizzas. And we were on, it was about an hour waiting for that party with the pastor. And then came the manager and the bouncer. Was it bouncer or bouncers? I can't remember.
Yeah, she was like 5'2".
Anyway, they said, what are you doing? And we said, just doing a little bit of entertainment for the guests because they're waiting. They said, we want you to leave now. And I said, our whole party? And he went, cha-ching, and said, your whole party? And I see, we're here with the local pastor and a whole stack of people. And suddenly his attitude changed when he saw that it was a big party we were with. And they were real nice to us from then on.
Yeah, and I've seen you, Ray, find your way to get on into the kitchen or at least right up to it and give tracts to the cooks.
Yeah.
As you're in or on the plane, you want to make sure you give a couple tracts to The pilots, nobody would approach a pilot. You think that is so off limits, but you find a way to get into areas that people typically don't do. Would you say that's simply
I like
because...
to bang on that door real hard.
Get on, open that door. Would you say that's just because you're knocking on doors, spiritually speaking, to see if you can get on in there to share the gospel, and God opens up doors?
Yeah, I've learned you can do anything if you've got a little boldness. I've got onto tourist buses that are stopped. They just park for a moment. You just jump on the bus, go right down the aisle, give them people track, and get off. And no one complains. They say thank you very much, especially if it's $1 trillion bill.
Yeah.
So it's up to your sense of adventure and boldness, and you're amazed what you can do.
You know, we were in Europe, and I didn't know how far I was going to be able to go, but I don't remember where in Europe we were at, but there was a concert going on once we got off the train. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know, I'm going to try to get up on stage and preach the gospel. Maybe I can do the light show. And I ended up getting all the way, I was with Eddie, ended up getting all the way to the back of the stage, and they stopped me from getting up on stage. So I was a big failure. Now, I guess we can't even actually look at it as failure, because failure is failing to open up your mouth.
Right.
Failing to hand out that gospel tract. And we can't confuse faithfulness and fruitfulness as failure. Hey, what is faithfulness? Well, if you're faithful in trying to share the gospel, you were fruitful. If you got rejected with the tract, you were still faithful.
Right.
Don't confuse that as unfruitfulness.
Right.
So we have to be careful. So back to this guy, I just simply say, hey, you don't need to be deceptive. The gospel is strong enough to be able to accomplish what it needs to accomplish, because God said so. It's the power of God unto salvation. Scotty, we want to jump on over to you and talk about the tool of the day. With,
I have a really neat one. It's the new and improved $1 million bill. We call it the Patriotic Millions. And 4th of July is coming up, and you won't be able to keep them. People will ask you for more. I'm sure they will. It's improved. It's got larger text. It's a very succinct gospel message. And it's got the American flag on it. Who's going to resist that? So it's a great resource.
A lot of people in America nowadays, Scotty.
Reject. We got this email from Eric. He said, I've watched many of the street preaching videos and was wondering, do you have a video or literature that goes through the process from start to finish of doing street preaching? I know there's preparation before, during, and after someone is on the box, and that there are more people than just those who get on the box, but what does a typical setup look like? So here you are, Ray. You're on a Saturday. You preach every day with Scotty down in Huntington Beach from 1:30 to 3:30. You guys just go there, get up on the box, and preach.
Yeah, what we do is, when we arrive, we get just hundreds of unsaved people pack around us and say, please tell us what you want to say. No, actually, we get there, it's pretty barren, people crossing from the crossing, so we put our soapboxes there, and so one for the heckler, one for us. Draw a chalk line using a piece of string, so it's a nice art line, and then we get up and give away money, and that attracts people, and we keep plenty of energy up, and it's very important. There's a lot of little things you learn with experience. One is, if you preach for 10 minutes and you hand over to a buddy to take over, you don't say, thank you so much for listening to me, I really appreciate it, because people will say, oh, you're finished, and they'll leave, and then your poor friend has to get up and start all over again. So it's good to keep the energy level up. And Scotty, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, something that didn't cross my mind at first, because we so take it for granted, is we've been doing it for a while. So we've worked things out. And I have a flip chart that I had printed out. I worked on some of the design of it, and it grabs people's attention, has the IQ test on it, things like that. Certainly prayer, I think everybody remembers that one, because you're always so nervous in going to do it. But things like that, you got to go do it. And it's the doing that magnifies the things that are lacking. And so as you do it, you're going to adjust it, and it's going to become exciting as you work on new things and say, hey, maybe we could use this or do that. And then you work on it all week, and you can't wait to get out there and try it out and watch it fail.
You know, I forgot to mention that we don't just give away money. We give away money when people answer trivia questions. And it's very sensible not to make the trivia questions hard. You know, spell xylophone or something like that. People can't do that. But you just ask the question, what's the capital of France? And someone will say Paris. Says, that's right. Give them a hand. Get people to clap, and you run down and give people money. We give away money for wrong answers. And I find capitals are really, really good questions to ask people. What's the capital of England? And people say London. What's the capital of China, Australia? And when people get them, you give them money, and they come around and you say, please come up to the line, because they don't want to be yelling at you. Come up to the line. And then you swing from asking trivia to asking the good test, taking someone through for $20.
You know,
Also, we've got a new video coming out about Berkeley. We went to Berkeley.
yes, we did.
Our team must be about 8 months ago.
Yeah.
And we had a wonderful time in Berkeley, and we filmed it. We had 2 or 3 cameras. And Scotty, you're working on that now. You're pulling it together. How's it coming?
Yeah, there's a lot of footage, but it's coming together well, and we got some good angles, and there were very colorful people. You can imagine at Berkeley, they're very outspoken, and there's some really good stuff in there about handling different questions and objections and the different situations that arise, and so it'll be a great resource.
You know,
we should
Eric,
call it UC Berkeley.
you see berserkly. You know, the person Eric had asked specifically for some recommendations, and Alan had actually jotted down some great ideas. Season 4 of our TV show where we went to Europe, it deals specifically with open air preaching, and the Paris episode specifically has an entire open air preaching from beginning to end where you are walking somebody through on how to go about doing that. If you're on YouTube, then you want to check out one of our playlists we have on there. It's entitled Open Air, where we have a lot of different open air preaching sessions, and you can see the beginning to end. Many different people, not just Ray, but other people at the ministry and people we appreciate. We also have in our download section of our online store at livingwaters.com, it's Open Air Preaching New York, and it is an A to Z on how to open air preach, and it doesn't leave anything out.
I was using my younger body then.
Yes, you were. Down through the ages. One more quick email here. We're running out of time. A friend from my church has invited me to accompany him on a visit to our local prison along with the prison chaplain. The intent is for us to see the mission field and spend some time with the chaplain, figuring out ways we can come alongside him in the ministry to prisoners. Do you have any recommendations on how to share the gospel with the inmates if I'm given the opportunity?
No.
Nope, sorry about that. Well, the gospel doesn't change, obviously. Obviously, we're going to share the gospel, but how we go about doing that, we're going to cater that to some degree with the individual. We can have the courtroom illustrations, talk about judges, talking about prison sentences, and the light tends to go on as you're able to relate to people like that. Maybe, Easy would have been a good fit with his past.
Perhaps we could bring this up tomorrow and work on it, because I've got a lot of little stuff I'd like to share, but we can't do it in 43 minutes.
And with
34.
Easy's past.
Dyslexic.
He might have a lot to say about this.
Easy's on assignment.
Easy is on assignment. Well, so there we go. There we have it. Pray for us as we finish up the last little bit of the video that we're working on entitled Famous Atheists. Be on the lookout for the promo, the trailer, which should hit YouTube here in the next couple days. As it goes to color and audio, should be a very neat and exciting, getting some really neat commendations. So God bless you. Thank you for joining us today with On the Box. Tune in tomorrow. God bless you.
Thank you, Mark. Yes.
For questions about On the Box with Ray Comfort or to submit questions for future shows, please email onthebox@livingwaters.com. That's onthebox@livingwaters.com. On the Box with Ray Comfort is an outreach of Living Waters. For more resources to inspire and equip you to fulfill the Great Commission, check out livingwaters.com or call toll-free 1-800-437-1893. Now go and preach the gospel.